I walked into my high school graduation ceremony with a mask on my face and a secret that was eating me alive, but the most shocking part isn't that I was hiding. It's that the person who scarred me was standing on that stage receiving an award for kindness and leadership. I stood there, feeling the itchy, raised tissue of the chemical burns across my left cheek and neck, listening to the crowd cheer for a monster, and I realized that if I didn't speak up now, I would be wearing this mask for the rest of my life. Would you have the courage to stand up in front of 1,000 people and reveal your deepest shame just to see justice served? Or would you stay hidden in the shadows forever? I need you to tell me if I went too far, because what I did next changed every single life in that room. And honestly, some people say I'm the villain now. My life wasn't always a series of long-sleeve shirts and high collars. 3 years ago, I was just Maya, a girl who loved track and field, had a messy room, and thought her biggest problem was passing chemistry. Then came the accident, or what everyone was told was an accident. It happened in the school lab during a late-night study session for the state finals. I was working with Sarah, the girl everyone loved. Sarah was the golden child, the daughter of the school board president, and the girl who had been my best friend since kindergarten. But Sarah had a competitive streak that bordered on psychopathic. When she realized my lab results were better than hers, and that I was likely to take the top scholarship she desperately needed for her Ivy League dreams, something in her snapped. She tripped, while carrying a beaker of concentrated sulfuric acid. I remember the cold splash, the immediate searing heat that felt like 1,000 hornets stinging me at once, and the sound of my own screaming. Sarah didn't call for help immediately. She stood there and watched for a few seconds, a look of pure, calculated calm on her face before she started her frantic crying act. By the time help arrived, the damage was done. The left side of my face, my jawline, and my shoulder were a map of melted skin and trauma. The months that followed were a blur of surgeries, skin grafts, and the smell of antiseptic. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the social death that followed. When I finally returned to school, I was different. I wore a medical mask and hoodies even in the middle of a heat wave. I became the girl with the face. And Sarah? She played the victim perfectly. She told everyone she was traumatized by the accident she had caused. She started a foundation for burn victims in my name, which sounds sweet, right? Except she used it to build her own brand, constantly posting photos of her looking sad and reflective, while I was actually at home, unable to look in a mirror. The bullying started small. Whispers in the hallway about how I looked like a horror movie extra, or how I should just stay home so I wouldn't scare the normal kids. Sarah didn't stop them, she encouraged it. She'd lean in and whisper to me, "It's a shame, Maya. You used to be so pretty. Now you're just a reminder of a mistake I'm trying so hard to move on from." She made my existence about her guilt, and then she made that guilt my fault. I spent 2 years eating lunch in a bathroom stall, hidden away, while she climbed the social ladder using my tragedy as her platform. Every day was a battle. I remember one specific Tuesday in October. I was walking to the library, trying to stay close to the lockers to remain invisible. A group of football players, Sarah's friends, blocked my path. They started making sizzling sounds with their mouths. One of them reached out and tried to tug at my mask, laughing that they just wanted to see if I was done cooking. I ran to the bathroom and cried until my eyes were swollen, but I couldn't even wipe my tears properly because the skin on my left side was too sensitive. Sarah walked in, saw me shaking, and instead of helping, she leaned against the sink and checked her makeup. "You really should stop being so sensitive, Maya," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "If you didn't act like such a freak, maybe they wouldn't treat you like one. My dad says your family is lucky he didn't sue for the emotional distress I went through witnessing your injury." I couldn't believe it. Her family had more money than God, and here they were, threatening my parents who were already drowning in medical bills. My father worked 2 jobs, and my mother had stopped sleeping just to keep up with the insurance paperwork. The psychological warfare was even worse than the isolation. Sarah managed to turn my own parents against my instincts. Whenever I tried to tell my mom that I didn't think it was an accident, she would sigh and tell me I was letting bitterness cloud my judgment. "Sarah has been so supportive, Maya. She raised $10,000 for your surgeries. How can you be so ungrateful?" That was the sting that never stopped. being told I owed my life to the person who had destroyed it. I started to believe it for a while. I thought maybe I was crazy. Maybe she did trip. But then I saw her in the locker room one day, when she thought I was already in the showers. She was laughing with her inner circle, mocking the way I walked with my head down. She called me the phantom of the hallway, and joked that at least now she didn't have to worry about me stealing her spotlight at the spring formal. That was the moment my sadness turned into a cold, hard diamond of rage. I didn't want to die anymore. I wanted to win. I began my investigation with the precision of a detective. I knew the school's security system was outdated, but I also knew the tech teacher, Mr. Henderson, was a stickler for backups. I spent weeks staying late, pretending to catch up on lab work I'd missed, just to get close to the server room. It took me months of trial and error, learning basic coding from YouTube, and watching the janitor's patterns, to find the right file. When I finally saw the footage from that night in the lab, I vomited. It was worse than I thought. You could see Sarah looking at the beaker, looking at me, and then deliberately lunging forward. There was no trip. No escape. It was a calculated strike. I watched her face after I fell. She didn't look scared. She looked satisfied. I copied the file to 3 different hidden drives and hid them in places no one would ever look. One in an old hollowed-out textbook, one buried in the garden, and one in a locker at the local train station. But I needed more. I needed her to admit it, because a grainy video might be explained away by her powerful father. I started wearing a high-end digital recorder taped to the inside of my collar every single day. I waited for her to get comfortable. I waited for her to think I was completely broken. I began to play the role of the submissive victim even better. I'd nod when she insulted me. I'd thank her for her charity. She grew arrogant. During the senior retreat, we were alone in a cabin for a moment, and she was feeling particularly high on her own power. She looked at me and said, "You know, Maya, I actually did you a favor. You were always so plain. Now at least you're interesting. Just make sure you stay in the shadows during the graduation photos. I don't want your face ruining my perfect record." I asked her why she did it. Really did it, and she laughed. She actually laughed. She told me that she couldn't risk me getting the valedictorian spot. She said her father had promised her a Porsche if she was number 1. And I was consistently beating her in math and science. A few scars were a small price to pay for my future, she said. I had it all. Every word, every cruel chuckle, captured in high-fidelity audio. But the evidence wasn't enough. I needed to know how deep the cover-up went. I started looking into the school board records. It turns out, Sarah's father had made a generous donation to the school's renovation fund exactly 1 week after the accident. And strangely, the official police report had been filed as a no-fault equipment failure. They had blamed the beaker itself, saying it was faulty and shattered on its own. They had completely erased the fact that Sarah was even holding it. I felt a level of betrayal that I can't even describe. The adults I was supposed to trust, the principal, the board, even the local cops, had all been bought off. My life was sold for a new gymnasium and a luxury car. I spent my nights planning. I didn't just want Sarah to lose her scholarship. I wanted the whole corrupt system to crumble. I knew that if I went to the police now, the report would just disappear again. I needed a stage where the entire world was watching. I needed the graduation ceremony. The weeks leading up to graduation were the hardest of my life. I had to sit through rehearsals, watching Sarah practice her valedictorian speech. She spoke about integrity and the future of our generation. Every time she said the word, honesty, I felt like I was going to throw up. I stayed in the back, my mask pulled tight, my eyes fixed on the floor. I let her think she had won. I even let her generously offer to buy my graduation gown, because my parents were struggling. I took her money and I donated it to a real burn center. Then I used my own savings to buy the equipment I needed for my final move. I worked with one person I knew I could trust, Leo, the AV club president. Leo was a social outcast just like me, and Sarah had bullied his younger brother the year before. When I showed him the video and the audio, he didn't even hesitate. "What do you need?" he asked. We spent hours in the darkened control booth, bypassing the school's security protocols, and setting up a remote trigger for the projector system. The night before graduation, I couldn't sleep. I sat in front of my mirror and took the mask off. I looked at the red, angry skin. For the first time, I didn't feel disgusted. I felt like a soldier looking at her armor. Those scars were the proof of Sarah's crime. And they were going to be the weapon that destroyed her. My mother came into the room and saw me. She started to cry, reaching out to touch my face, but I pulled away. Don't, I said. You didn't want to see this for 3 years. Don't start now. It was harsh, but it was the truth. My parents had failed me. And as much as I loved them, I realized I was doing this alone. I put the mask back on and went to the ceremony. So that's the situation I was in. I had the truth in my pocket, the evidence on a server, and the person who destroyed my life was about to be crowned the queen of our town. I was standing in the back of the auditorium, my heart hammering against my ribs, feeling the weight of the mask on my skin like it was made of lead. I had to make a choice. Do I let her win and keep my peace? Or do I burn her world down the way she burned my skin? I knew that once I did this, there was no going back. I would be the girl who ruined graduation. I would be the girl who caused a scandal that would haunt this town for decades. But I also knew that if I didn't do it, Sarah would go on to become a doctor or a lawyer. And she would keep hurting people because she never learned there were consequences. Before I tell you what happened when I walked onto that stage and the video started playing, I want you to pause right now and comment below. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have stayed quiet to avoid the drama and just moved on with your life? Or would you have risked everything? Your reputation, your family's standing, your peace, to expose the monster? Tell me your honest thoughts, because what happened next was total, unmitigated chaos that nobody in that room will ever forget. The ceremony started like any other. The band played, the parents cheered, and the air was thick with the smell of cheap flowers and hairspray. I stood in line with the other graduates, a ghost in a sea of blue gowns. When it was time for the valedictorian speech, the principal stood up and gave a glowing introduction for Sarah. He called her the heartbeat of this school and a shining example of resilience. I saw Leo in the AV booth. He gave me a tiny, almost invisible nod. This was it. As Sarah walked to the podium, the lights dimmed for her tribute video, a montage of her school achievements she had insisted on playing. But as the first slide appeared, I stepped out of line. I didn't walk, I marched. I felt every eye in the room turn toward me. The murmurs started immediately. What is she doing? Is that the burned girl? I didn't care. I climbed the stairs to the stage just as the tribute was supposed to start. Sarah stopped talking, her hand frozen on the microphone. She looked at me, and for a split second, the mask of the golden girl slipped. Her eyes went wide with a primal, animalistic fear. I didn't say a word to her. I walked straight to the center of the stage, stood right next to her, and looked out at the 1,000 people in the audience. I saw the cameras. The local news was there. The parents were live streaming. Perfect. I reached up, my fingers trembling only slightly, and I unhooked the straps of my mask. I pulled it away and dropped it on the floor. A collective gasp, a sound of pure shock, echoed through the hall. Some people actually recoiled. I stood there, letting them see the damage that had been covered up with donations and lies. And then the scream behind us came to life. It wasn't Sarah's highlight reel. The video started with the date and timestamp from the lab 3 years ago. It was crystal clear. The audience watched in total, horrific silence as the footage showed Sarah picking up the acid, looking at me with a cold, focused expression, and then lunging. They watched as I collapsed, screaming, and they watched as Sarah stood over me, doing nothing. Then the audio began. Leo had boosted the volume so it shook the floorboards. Sarah's own voice boomed through the speakers. A few scars were a small price to pay for my future. Nobody cares about a scarred girl, Maya. My dad already paid for the police report to go away. The secondary evidence started scrolling. Scans of the bank transfers from her father to the school board members. The original police notes that had been crossed out and rewritten. It was a digital execution. Sarah started to scream. It wasn't the victim's scream she had used in the lab. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated rage. She tried to grab the laptop, but Leo had disabled the physical controls on the stage. She turned on me, her fingernails clawing at my ear, shouting, "You bitch! You ruined everything. Do you know what my father will do to you?" Those words, caught by the live microphone on the podium, were the final nail in her coffin. The audience wasn't just shocked anymore. They were angry. I saw parents standing up, pointing at Sarah's father who was trying to fight his way through the crowd to get to the AV booth. I saw the principal trying to hide behind the curtain. The shining example of resilience was revealed to be a cold-blooded criminal. The police officers who were there for graduation security didn't wait for a formal complaint. They saw a felony confession and evidence of a cover-up happening in real time. They moved in. As they handcuffed Sarah right there on the stage, in her graduation gown. She looked at me with so much hate, I thought she might actually try to kill me right there. "I should have used more acid," she hissed as they led her away. Those were the last words she ever spoke in that school. Her father was tackled by 2 officers as he tried to destroy the backup drives. The ceremony didn't continue. It couldn't. The graduation turned into a crime scene. The aftermath was a legal and social hurricane. Sarah was charged with aggravated assault and tampering with evidence. Because the audio proved she had planned it, the accident was reclassified as a premeditated attack. Her father was indicted for bribery, obstruction of justice, and fraud. The school board was dissolved within a month, and the principal resigned before he could be fired. But for me, the battle was just beginning. My parents were broken. My mother spent weeks crying, realizing how much she had hurt me by not believing me. We had to move. The town was split. Half the people thought I was a hero, and the other half, the wealthy families who were friends with Sarah's, made our lives a living hell. They sued my parents for defamation, though they lost miserably once the evidence was admitted in court. I spent the next year in intensive therapy, not just for the trauma of the burn, but for the trauma of the betrayal. I realized that the physical scars were the easiest part to heal. The hardest part was learning to trust my own voice again. I moved to a big city where no one knew the acid girl story. I started college, and on my first day, I didn't wear a mask. I didn't wear a hoodie. I wore a tank top that showed the scars on my shoulder. A girl in my dorm asked me what happened, and for the first time, I didn't make up a story about a kitchen fire. I told her the truth. She didn't look away in disgust. She looked at me with respect. That was the moment I knew I had truly won. Sarah is currently serving a 5-year sentence in a youth correctional facility, and her family is bankrupt from the legal fees. Sometimes I feel bad for her, but then I remember the sound of that acid hitting my skin, and I remember that she chose this path for both of us. Looking back, I realize that some people will always prefer a pretty lie over an ugly truth because the truth requires action. I chose the truth, even though it was messy and it hurt. It taught me that the only person who can truly advocate for you is yourself, and that hiding your scars only gives power to the person who gave them to you. My life isn't perfect, and I still have bad days where I can't stand to look in the mirror. But those days are becoming fewer and farther between. I am more than what happened to me. I am the girl who stood up. If you learned something from my story, or if you think Sarah got exactly what she deserved, please like this video to show your support. It helps me know I'm not alone in this journey. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice and real-life experiences, and please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I go too far by crashing the graduation? Or was it the only way to ensure they couldn't bury the truth again? I'll be reading your comments and replying to as many as I can. I'll see you all in the next story.